Welcome back to GrokTALK. I'm Steve McDonald here with Skip Murphy and Mike Rogers. We come to you every week to share local and national events with a New Hampshire perspective. We're brought to you by GraniteRock.com, supported by the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers, and we have Christmas week off. Just wanted to let you know in advance. Back to some local sans national news, because we have a local candidate who made a national splash thanks to somebody else. We would like to welcome to the program Marilynda Garcia, who is going to be running in the primary as a Republican to challenge Ann Custer in CD2 New Hampshire. How you doing?
Very well, thank you, though I'm still trying to thaw.
Yes, yep.
It's chilly.
Yeah. You sound okay? Do we sound
if
okay?
you can hear me.
I can hear you.
Good.
You can hear? We can all hear? All right, well, let's get on with it then.
Yeah. Well, Skip Murphy, I think we've met but just a long time ago, and I want to say thank you for coming on GrokTALK with us. And certainly, you came out of the gate real quick thanks to P.D. Sullivan, Mr. Stiletto. And yes, we have been, being the kind of bloggers that we are, we've been having a grand time of this, much to hopefully your amusement and to his detriment for waging the Democrat war on women. But certainly there's a serious side to this, because you are running for an office that gets the ability to decide on how people are going to run their lives. And even though we can certainly look at politics as a game from time to time, perhaps us more than most people do that are news and political junkies, it is a very serious game. So if you would, for our audience, lay out who you are and what you're all about and what you're hoping to accomplish if you happen to win the office.
Sure. Well, the things you just described are actually a great segue, because in fact, when I first did decide to run when I was 23 for my first term and now in my fourth, it did occur to me that the fact of the matter is, whether you like politics or not, regardless of all the frustrations and gamesmanship and drama in some ways, at the end of the day, you're making decisions that affect people's lives, and the reason everyone should be involved is that if you're not making the decisions or voting for someone who supports and reflects your values most closely, then other people will be making those decisions. So you'd best be involved in some way or another. And so to that extent, I'm again now in my fourth term, and I wasn't sure if I was going to be running for my House seat again, and was inclined not to, only because I think I've been working hard to achieve certain reforms and help develop our economy and all of these things, but it's a big world out there, and I thought maybe I'll go off and do something else with my life at the time. However, looking at our current representation in Congress and looking at the ways that I could be most effective, I thought now might be a good time to run for Congress if I ever were to consider running for higher office. So, and what I'm hoping to take there is, again, having worked on a variety of issues in my time in Concord, one of my frustrations is that here I am, here we are, we work to achieve certain reforms, we work to open up our markets, develop free enterprise, keep our people free and prosperous and their money in their own pockets, and the half of the time, especially during my time on the Finance Committee these last 2 terms, we would spend our time working to basically beat off all of these terrible things coming down the pipeline from the federal government. If New Hampshire elected and state local officials could use their time and energy on just trying to solve New Hampshire's challenges, I think we'd be a lot more successful. But instead, we have a lot of unfunded liabilities, mandates, regulatory issues, and all of these that keep being churned out by the feds. And so, at the very least, I would like to take myself to Washington and help prevent those things from disturbing the climate here in New Hampshire. And of course, the most recent example of that is the ACA Medicaid expansion, where again the ACA is seeking to solve one small problem. It's a serious issue, of course, but let's say our uninsured population is approximately about 24,000. I've heard that estimated. Well, why can't we as, again, state officials, we're here on the ground, we're citizens ourselves, very much involved in our communities. We have our innovators, we have, our entrepreneurs, and we're working on, I personally have been involved in open data, pricing transparency, regulatory reform, developing the specialty sector, developing the innovation economy, developing the high-tech industry, again, trying to open all of that. And now the Medicaid expansion and ACA is seeking to destroy our entire healthcare climate, prevent people from going to the hospitals they've been going to for years, kicking people off their employer-sponsored insurance and sending them to a subpar, Medicaid provision, and so it's a mess. So that was quite a long-winded way to say that I would love to stop the federal government, or at least lend my vote to helping New Hampshire solve its own challenges.
In the support of the assault against you, right, actually attacking the assault against you by Peter Sullivan, and got a lot of national attention. We want to thank Katie Pavlich for bringing that to a lot of national media, which brought out that whole story and exposed Peter Sullivan for the guy that he is, basically.
From Town Hall.
From Town Hall, yep. And a lot of the libertarians, as we were talking about this, were concerned about that particular argument, that you would, when you're at the state level, and this is the case I made, it's different. States can do, state sovereignty means that the people you elect at the state level are free to represent the people there and pass laws the Constitution prevents the federal government from passing. So when you step up to that level, you now become responsible to the national Constitution as well, where you are limited in what you can do. So a lot of questions came up about sovereignty, and the first one that I think I directed through Jason Bedrick was marijuana. And somebody had asked me, well, is she going to try to regulate marijuana and at the state level from the federal government? And your answer was?
So I'm a big supporter of states' rights. And to be honest, a lot of these bills, I'm quite agnostic on the issue, to be honest. It's not something I really thought about, but then the different arguments were presented during my time in the House. And of course, as a responsible policymaker, I, take a vote on it. And frankly, the ones we've seen, decriminalization and medicinal marijuana, well, if you decriminalize, then what is the substance? How do we, do we tax it? Is it a controlled substance? What happens there? There's a lot of questions. Then on the medicinal side, frankly, I am a supporter of small government, and once we open that up and allow it to be, have these dispensaries and allow for the state to sort of basically develop a new bureaucracy around it, then just given all the other issues coming from, medical professionals and law enforcement, I didn't, support it. Is it something I'm crusading against? No.
But from the federal government level, you would leave it to the state?
Yeah, from
and
the
I would say that
government.
I made that case. I didn't say if I was for or against it, but I wrote a very long article asking the question, because a lot of libertarians were pushing for it. Would this make government smaller, or would it make it bigger? And you have to ask that question.
Exactly.
If deregulation creates regulation,
Right.
is that a danger, and does that put you backwards just because you got some petty issue that you were really supportive of? So yeah,
Right.
the real question was, would it be something that you would want to try to do something with from the federal level? And your answer was no.
No.
I'm looking at your site right now, and I was hoping to see, like most
Well-developed policies, yeah.
yeah, the issues and the
Set,
policies and
of
all
course.
of that. And it's not there yet. I would like to hope that we would see that, because certainly we've got a lot of time. And frankly, I'm looking at this time not as an interview, but just as a conversation with you, because I certainly don't know you all that well. I'm hoping that we will have other chances to sit down with you and ask specific policy questions.
Well, let me tell you, so I've been in for about 2 weeks now, and this is just my basic, very basic digital infrastructure, who I am, and then, hey, donate to the cause.
Right.
If you know me already or like me or are inclined to support me. However, I'm intending in January to do a full press conference campaign rollout, so I'm developing my policy positions and website, and that'll be much more fleshed out in the future.
Well, there can be policies on all kinds of subjects
Sure.
and issues, but generally when people ask me, for whatever reason, asking this lowly blogger, what do you think I should do? What do you think I should say? It's like, okay, have 5 top issues, concentrate on 3.
Sure.
So I'll ask you off the top of your head, what would your 5 top issues be? You said small government, states' rights, but is that in your top 5? Is it one of your top 3? And if not, what are you thinking could be there? I'm not trying to nail you down, just to give our conservative libertarian audience an idea. Who is she on the policies?
Sure, of course. And it would be incorrect for me to say that I have enumerated them, in a particular order or in a coherent way at this point. But my general thing is, I think the clear, most compelling issue right now in our country is this Obamacare issue. That's something where, I was a supporter, I wasn't supportive of it at all. Then I was in the let's repeal it camp. Now it's sadly entrenched itself in many ways, so I am still supportive of repealing it. I just don't know if it's actually feasible. So to that end, it looks, you swing to the basically area of, okay, what do we replace? What do we reform? What do we change? How do we make it as less heinous as possible, basically? So again, on that respect, there are a lot of different ideas out there. On my end in the state, I have been, like I said, working on making things a lot more consumer oriented when it comes to healthcare choices, to allow the innovation economy and high-tech sector to keep pace with the scientific developments and provide for a lot of specialized care, anything the case may be. Allow for self-pay and uninsured patients to be able to seek out, if that's the way they would like to go about it, they feel they're healthy or whatever the case may be, they do their own cost-benefit analysis, and they should be able to seek out medical treatment and procedures and actually know what it costs them, and have some quality markers there too. So those are then swinging into the technology side. Data is a big thing now. Open data in insurance claims, transparency in that all contributes to being able to understand what are the low-cost drivers, and again, what things actually ought to cost, and then how much they're being charged now. So those are issues where I'm sure they'll come up, on the federal level, but at the end of the day, I would always default and err to, if whatever I'm voting on the federal level will cause New Hampshire officials and entrepreneurs and prevent them from developing in all these areas, then that's not something I would support. So my objective would be to prevent the federal government from being a continued obstacle to the better, development of the healthcare climate in our state. So that's kind of my, 30,000-foot view, I guess, with some, specifics about how I'd be inclined.
Okay, so states' rights, healthcare, that's 2.
Yeah. The other most compelling one, obviously, is that you would hope on a, again, basic level, that your congressional representation would take a serious crack at what frankly is going to keep our whole ship afloat or not, and that is our debt and our deficit. I mean, I'm 30 years old, and I've been educated, I've gotten to speak and meet, to so many people, visit many places in the world through my, musical travels and, pseudo diplomatic things I've been able to be involved in. And I find it sad that when I'm talking to my peer group and, my friends and, people in my generation and demographic, we talk about our future, we talk about, what we want to do with our lives, all the time and money we've invested in, being educated and pursuing a certain profession. And a lot of the time we talk about, of course we all want to be successful, have a great job, have a, nice family and, live and prosper. But we talk about what's our plan B. When the U.S. economy and banking system crashes, what are we going to do? And that's really sad. I think that's frightening that, people at my age actually have to think about that. And that's a direct result of, frankly, the disregard and, I don't know if you want to call it irresponsibility. I don't know if you want to call it keeping the status quo. I don't know what you want to call it, but our federal officials are not preventing our debt from escalating and escalating and escalating and growing. And so, again, I would hope at a basic level, congressional representation, and I would seek to be really serious about that and look at, don't just call it an accomplishment like this week when, oh look, we managed to put something together that prevented the government from shutting down. Well, why not also work on certain reforms? Why not do government employee spending freeze, or excuse me, pay increase freeze, right? I mean, we shouldn't be upping salaries. Why don't we look at our different departments and try to, the way we do on the state level again, and see what's actually working, what are outcomes-based, measures that we can look at and benchmarks, and, so again, I'd like to see a more serious approach. What about the situation like we have now with the Farm Bill that our representative, Custer, she's on agriculture. The Farm Bill, you would think, has to do just with those types of things. Well, 80% of it has to do with, welfare and food stamps issues, all of that. We should have, that should be separated. We should be seriously excising the waste and be, again, serious about actually cutting down our debt and deficit. So I'll be perfectly honest, I don't know, once you get there how much you're actually able to do as a freshman, but at least you could count on me as being a responsible vote in that area.
And that's a great thing, and the rest of it I think is forming coalitions with other like-minded members to put enough pressure on to move the needle.
Okay. All right, so there's 3.
Okay, yes.
Number 4. See, we're all engineers. We count.
My dad's an engineer.
I'm not an engineer. I just work with them.
Well, again, I will have fully developed, policy proposals and ideas and all that. So again, I would hate to just try to keep enumerating off the top of my head, but these are the serious issues, right now. And I think those 3 or 2 or whatever it was at this point,
3.5
alone would be a lot, to deal with. Then let's not beat around the bush. The other thing is, I think as a federal rep, one ought to be at least slightly attuned to what major issues have occurred in the last year, especially when it relates to foreign policy, things that have left our diplomats, Ambassador Stevens, servicemen dead, and then also not to mention have been an indicator of serious security flaws, but also resulted in the blaming of an American citizen for inciting violence, and then he was jailed for nothing for putting up something on YouTube. I mean, these things are all connected, and I think one ought to be able to have a coherent, idea or thought.
But what difference does it make, as ex-Secretary of State Hillary Clinton said? But those are the kinds of things that certainly I'd like to be able to talk to you in more detail about.
Sure.
But
so Libya's in the Middle East?
And North Africa.
Yeah, okay, just wanted to check.
Well,
it's on the record.
The State Department does classify it as the Middle East.
It does, and it has been since the
way
mid-50s or
mid-50s,
even before that. Yeah,
back in the Eisenhower regime. But yeah, those are the kinds of things. Now, certainly, we are very much a group of bloggers that are constitutionally based, U.S. and New Hampshire. We certainly believe in Judeo-Christian traditional philosophy, and we blog from those conservative ideals. And what we see is an out-of-control government. We were a founding co-member of the New Hampshire Tea Party Coalition. 3 principles: fiscal frugality, free markets, and a government that lives within the U.S. Constitution. I'll just ask, I know you're already being berated by the Democrats as an extremist Tea Party person anyways. I mean, we look at it and go, well, thank you very much. You can't do that. We can say other things that most people can't.
Wait a minute, for perspective, they think Scott Brown's the Tea Party guy, so...
Well, yeah, and Bill O'Brien was a Free Stater.
That's right, yes.
It's like, what?
They just keep pushing him,
But anyways, does any of those things, irrespective of the label that the Democrats throw around without knowing what it really is, because much of it is thrown about lots of other stuff that has nothing to do with those 3 principles.
Well, I'll be honest about, I think there are the principles and then there are the labels associated with different factions. And to be honest, my point of commonality and the way, when I first ran, I didn't even know, there was such thing as the the real Republican and the conservative Republican and the libertarian Republican and the libertarian and the Tea Party, and of course the Tea Party didn't exist, I guess, at the time. But I just thought, well, here are the principles, that I agree on. Again, the personal responsibility, limited government, individual opportunity and freedom, and small government, all of these things. And I thought, okay, here's why I'm running. So that was my approach. And then you find out, there's a much wider spectrum just under that same tent. But still, through the years, I have worked with, what I would do is I'll say, here's, my position on something, or here's my thought on this policy, or here's an idea about something. And then you talk to your colleagues who, again, we're all working to the same end, more or less, the same goal and what we're trying to accomplish. But you do quibble on, what's the best way to go about it. Do we want to, is the incremental approach on this issue a good thing to do, or does that somehow compromise, an underlying principle? So these are the things you argue about and debate, and I did a lot of that also when I was, a co-chair of the Republican Alliance Caucus. And, but, I've never thought about, let me talk to this person because I know they're, in this group, and here I am in this group. I've really not done any of that, and I find it frankly counterproductive in many ways. I mean, I respect very much and have worked with, again, colleagues that would fall into any one of those camps, and where we can agree, I think that's fantastic, and where one's, when we have a conscience vote for, different reasons, again, that's fine too, and I respect that. But I prefer to go about it, and this is the only thing that's allowed me to, well, not the only thing, but has allowed me to have a lot of peace, and confidence about my votes, in that during each campaign I try to tell people as fully as I can where I stand on issues, and then I actually vote that way. And that way, when there's pressure, to change your vote on this, that, or the other, because either, your district, there's people up in arms about it, or, or there's some sort of political reason, to do something in a different way, I can say, well, this is what I said in my campaign, so this is the way I'm going to vote. And I think that is the most clear-cut way to go about it. So, it doesn't mean you're a crusader on a certain thing. It doesn't mean that, we can't be reasonable about a lot of different things. But at the end of the day, if I said this is the way what I support and where I stand on this particular issue, I will err to what I said during my campaign. So that's how I've gone about it, as to the best of my ability.
Mike?
No, I've just been listening along. It's fantastic to hear somebody with real principles who's going to vote from the heart. And small government is really what it's about. And the age-old argument is how much government is enough, and really the answer is enough to defend the rights that we all inherently have, and not much more. And any concrete suggestions you have for how we're going to chip Washington down to size would be very, very welcome. And I think that's probably going to be part of your enunciated or enumerated platform.
Sure. I would look to that. Guys, do we get a water break?
We're done in
parched over
we're
here.
done in like 2 minutes.
Oh, okay.
So,
I'm sorry.
If you want, you can have this water.
Oh, thank you.
I think that the strongest point that you've made, as far as the things that you said so far, is the deference to the constitutional presentation of state sovereignty, which really would be the thing that would get you a lot of the libertarians to support your platform and your candidacy. One example, we were talking about healthcare. South Carolina, was it?
Yes.
It's just decided that they would rather pursue their own free market options in healthcare, and they are working on legislation to pretty much nullify Obamacare. Would you support something like that for New Hampshire?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. I know we don't have the time for an answer to the question, but I would ask that you would keep my favorite question from a philosophical standpoint in mind as you start to craft out your issues and your stances, so that we could know. I'm always asking, what is the proper role of government? And certainly you've been involved at the state level, a little bit at the county level, because you are a member of your county's delegation.
And they have different roles.
Right, they have different rules, they have different interests, and I was, an elected official in my town on the budget committee, so I saw a different set of rules or a different set of roles for government at that level. You're going to be transitioning, if you are successful, from being a state level to a federal level. And I would ask that you keep in mind what is the proper role of government. And almost, I would love to be able to see on your campaign site, here is what I think the proper role of the federal government is. And this is how it's overextended. Just to go back to what you said earlier, that there's a lot of stuff that it shouldn't be doing. That I get the inflection that, it's doing way much more than it should. And that's going to give a lot of people who have woken up politically here in New Hampshire a good insight into how you look at that as they're contemplating, should I vote for you or not. And hopefully we can have you back someday to answer that kind of a question. An really open-ended question.
Okay, I can get tangential about these things and a little too philosophical, so you're going to have to cut me off sometimes, maybe.
But see, that's our ballywick. That's what we really enjoy, because we talk from principle.
Okay.
And if you're talking from the heart, it will show.
Yes.
And that's going to do you a lot of good.
All right, Marilyn Garcia, thank you very much for taking some time to chat with us this morning on GrokTALK. My name's Steve McDonald. I am here with Skip Murphy and Mike Rogers, and we will be back next week with a new slate of guests, both national on the phone and local. And we hope you'll join us. Thanks a lot.
I like your music.
Grok TV.